Very rarely, cards let you look at the top cards of the deck and manipulate what's in there. So in this video, we're looking over the best cards that can either fix your next draw or ruin your opponents. And starting us off at number 10, we have Morphtronic Telefon. This is a level 1 Earth Machine Tuner monster that gets a different effect depending on what position he's in. In attack, it'll let you roll a 6-sided die to make you gain life points equal to the result. Then you special summon a Morphtronic monster from your graveyard with a level equal to or lower than the result. When in defense position, you can roll a die to look at that many cards from the top of your deck, and then you can send one excavated Morphtronic card to the graveyard and return the cards to either the bottom or top of your deck in any order. While Telefon can technically stack the top of your deck, any deck running this card wouldn't even dream of summoning in defense position. What's notable about this card is that its attack position effect can be used to reborn another Telefon from your graveyard, no matter what result you get with its dice, since it's level 1. And then the other copy can use this effect again. This means that if you ever get 2 Telefons in rotation, you can get almost unlimited link material by linking off one of them and bringing it back again. This also means that this card is an FTK enabler when coupled with cards like Cannon Soldier, since you can infinitely tribute the Telefons to inflict burn damage to your opponent. Even if you're prevented of doing burn damage somehow, such as getting hit with an Effect Veiler on Cannon Soldier, or being under the effect of Dark Ruler no more, this card can still be looped to gain infinite life points instead. That won't really win the game, but it'll ensure the only way you can lose is by deck out. Still, while there is a lot of hype behind this FTK at first, it ended up not doing much of anything in the TCG, so this card only gets a number 10 spot on this list. And coming at number 9, we have Destiny Hero Denier. This is a level 3 Dark Warrior monster which on summon lets you take a Destiny Hero monster from your deck, graveyard, or banish and place it on top of the deck. Also, once per duel, it can special summon itself from the graveyard if you have another Destiny Hero monster on the field or graveyard. Destiny Hero Denier was printed to solve an issue hero decks have had since forever. Since Destiny Hero Malicious was so good as a generic extender, it had to be semi-limited, which heavily hampered pure hero decks' potential. Denier makes it so you can take one of your banished Malicious and put it on top of your deck, allowing you to use it twice during the course of a duel, just as if it was still at 3. While its stacking effect can technically be used to draw into your desired Destiny Hero with a draw spell or to recycle extra cards, this is pretty much all it's ever going to be used for. Being able to use Malicious was so alluring that while the Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer engine was still present in almost every deck, some opted to run 2 Malicious and Denier as the Garnet instead of Dasher and Celestial. While you wouldn't really be getting to draw 2 cards of Celestial's graveyard effect, being able to get 3 link materials with the 2 activations of Malicious plus Denier coming back from the grave was pretty darn close. Ultimately, nowadays, since Verte is banned, this card is confined entirely to hero decks where it rightfully belongs as one of their strongest extenders. And at number 8, we have Flower Cardian Peony with Butterfly. This is a level 6 Dark Warrior Tuner monster which first must be special summoned from the hand by tributing a Flower Cardian monster, except another copy of itself. When it's special summoned, you can draw 1 card and reveal it. Then, if it's a Flower Cardian monster, you can look at the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck and place them on top or the bottom of the deck in any order. But if you didn't draw a Flower Cardian, you can send that card to the graveyard instead. Also, when it's used as a synchro material, it can treat itself and all of the synchro materials as level 2 monsters. The Flower Cardian archetype is one of the most outlandish things Konami has ever put into Yu-Gi-Oh! The goal of these cards is supposed to make you feel as if you're playing the traditional Japanese game Hanafuda inside of a Yu-Gi-Oh! Match. They're also one of the most involved combo decks in the game that plays unlike anything else available. Flower Cardians are the only deck in the game that can have a card like Flower Gathering, which straight up summons 4 Flower Cardians from the deck without it being a huge issue. Peony with Butterfly is super important for being one of the deck's tuners, letting you access their archetypal synchros like Borderfly, whose effect is a better version of Abyss Dweller, or Light Flare, who is a Spell Trap Negate. But this card's power to stack your opponent's deck really comes to the spotlight in FTK variants, which use Synchronized Realm to burn your opponent as they combo off, and then use multiple Flower Cardian Light Showers to burn them during the draw phase. By making sure your FTK won't get foiled by your opponent top decking the out, Peony with Butterfly makes this gimmicky deck even scarier to go up against. And coming at number 7, we have Orea, the Sylvan High Arbiter. This is a rank 7 Dark Plant monster which takes any 2 level 7 monsters. Once per turn, it lets you send a plant type monster from your hand or field to look at that many cards in the top of your deck, and then put them back on the top of your deck in any order. It also allows you to detach materials from itself and then excavate 1 to 3 cards from the top of your deck. Then you send any excavated plant monsters to the graveyard and then bounce that many cards from the field to the hand without targeting. Sylvans were another really unique combo deck which relied mostly on excavating cards and knowing what was on the top of your deck at all times. The deck had access to cards like Sylvan Charity, which as the name implies is an archetypal graceful charity, and Mount Sylvania, one of the greatest control tools of the time. However, the deck was only playable for as long as Soul Charge was legal at 3, since the deck's best boss monsters were high level without reliable special summoning conditions. The thing that made Sylvan Charity so good was that it gave you a decent way of drawing into your Soul Charge or Vanity's Emptiness as soon as possible, while also setting up your Excavate plays. Orea was by far the best rank 7 monster to make in the deck, even when considering how powerful Big Eye and Dracosac were at the time. When going second, a non-targeting bounce is very hard to deal with, especially if your opponent has flooded the field with extra deck monsters. However, this card also really shone as an extender. By sending one of your high-level plants to the grave to stack the top 7 or 8 cards of your deck, you could set up several plays in advance together with your excavators like Sylvan Princess Sprout. You could also use its second effect to return spend Miracle Fertilizers from the hand, which could then be used again to special summon another plant from the grave. Outside of a max C, very little could stop a Sylvan deck once it had its engine running, and this card was one of the major reasons why. And coming in at number 6, we have Spiral Gear Drone. This is a level 1 wind machine monster, which on summon, lets look at the top 3 cards from your opponent's deck and then place them back on top in any order. While on the field, it can tribute itself to give your Spiral monster 500 attack for each card they control as a quick effect. It can also banish itself in a Spiral card from your graveyard to add back a Spiral Super Agent from your graveyard to your hand. While Sylvans were a unique deck for having your combos become much better when you can keep track of the cards on top of your deck, Spirals were unique for needing you to know what your opponent had on top of their deck instead. The archetype was hardly playable at first, but they got a huge boost when they eventually got more support at the beginning of the Link era with Spiral Double Helix. The power of Double Helix, combined with the fact that Master Rule 4 had just begun, and there weren't that many good Link monsters yet, led to Spiral being one of the few archetypes to reach Tier 0 status in Yu-Gi-Oh's history. Drone's effect might look inoffensive at first, but being able to hit all of your powerful Spiral effects, which require you to call what type of card was on top of your opponent's deck, while also putting away their out for your board, made it extremely frustrating to deal with. Drone and Quick Fix were the first Spiral cards to hit on the ban list, each being limited not only due to not having a hard once per turn anywhere that mattered, like many other Spiral cards, but also because they were both low-stated machine-type monsters, which opened up machine duplication combos. Against most combo decks, it's best to wait and see if you top deck something that outs the board before scooping, but not against Spiral, since Drone would make sure you always had nothing on top of your deck. And at number 5, we have Oracle of Zefra. This is a field spell which on activation lets you add a Zefra monster from your deck to your hand. Also, when using Zefra monsters as material for a summon, this card can also trigger an effect depending on what monster you brought out. If it's a ritual, you get to shuffle a monster from the field into the deck. A fusion lets you special summon a monster from your hand. With a synchro, you can choose a monster from your deck and put it on top of your deck. And last, if it's an XCs, you can draw a card and then discard a card. Zefra was a pendulum strategy which didn't really put up that many results in the TCG, despite being much more popular in the OCG. Much of the deck's strength had to do with how powerful Zethrath is, as its scale effect can set up your pendulum summon by placing a Zefra monster face up in your extra deck and change its scale number. The OCG had a much better time abusing the Zefra engine than the TCG did, since not only did they have Christian Halki Fibrax available far sooner than us, they also never banned two of the most important enablers for Zefra, Denglong, First of the Yangzing, and Heavy Metal Foe's Electromite. But while an unbreakable board filled with negates may seem like a bare minimum expected out of a modern pendulum deck, the field spell allowed them to go even further beyond that. Not only did it offer unparalleled consistency when coupled with Zefrath, the effect to stack your deck was also incredibly relevant in some combos. By making a synchro with your Zefras, you could then put a strong hand trap on top of your deck, such as Artifact Lancia or Drone Lockbird. You could then draw into it with either the field's XC's effect or by tagging out your Halki Fibrax into Formula Synchron during your opponent's turn. And in the OCG, the combo was even stronger, since you could put Max C on top instead, which will stop pretty much every single deck from playing. And at number 4, we have Adamancipator Signs. This is a normal spell which lets you target and special summon any rock monster from a graveyard. But if it was an Adamancipator monster, you also get to put a level 4 lower rock monster from your deck on top of the deck. Shortly after the Master Rule 4 revisions were put into effect, we would get 3 new archetypes introduced to the game: Adamancipator, Eldritch, and Rika. Out of these 3, Adamancipator was the one that shone the brightest, even if only for a short while. This deck had access to Block Dragon, Union Carrier, Christian Halki Fibrax, O-Lion, together with Auroradon. It certainly kicked off Master Rule 5 in good style, as the deck that spammed the board with countless synchro monsters and abused the lack of an extra monster zone restrictions over the other extra deck strategies the hardest. Unfortunately, it just couldn't dominate the competitive scene at the time. Not because it wasn't powerful enough, but because of the global pandemic we were going through at the time that halted all real-life events. Before they could even come back properly, Konami had already addressed some of the more degenerate parts of the deck, like Jet Synchron and Black Dragon, which made it give away for other meta threats, such as Dragon Link again. Eldritch and Rika would end up as far more relevant archetypes for way more formats than Adamancipator in the end. Either way, Signs is one of the more powerful extenders in the deck, being able to stack either Dragite for a draw or Code Key Mirror Guardian for a negate. It only becomes stronger in the later versions of the deck, as stacking Prank Kid's Roxy's to get it onto the field with your excavators was almost full combo by itself, due to Prank Kid's Meow Meow Mew. Nowadays, the deck is the least playable it's ever been, with pretty much every single broken extra deck monster that made it good being banned by now. And at number 3, we have Goddess Skuld's Oracle. This is a continuous spell card, which when activated, if you control at least one monster and they're all Valkyrie monsters, you can add a Goddess Verdance's Guide from your deck to your hand. Additionally, once per turn, it lets you look at the top 3 cards from your opponent's deck, and then places them back in any order. but it locks you out of so many non-fairy monsters for the turn. The other cards we've seen so far that let you stack your opponent's deck have been in-engine pieces with a bonus effect to ruin your opponent's next draw. However, Goddess's Skuld Oracle was never played competitively in any dedicated Valkyrie strategy or anything of the sort. While this card's archetype is supposed to OTK your opponent by getting a double battle phase with Mischief of the Time Goddess, Skuld's Oracle's got its home in some of the slowest decks to ever be made in the meta, Mystic Mind Burn, which was the only strategy that ever ran this card. That deck aimed to lock the opponent under an unremovable Mystic Mine, which prevents the player with more monsters out from activating monster effects. This was done either by making the mine indestructible with Field Barrier, or by giving your opponent monsters with cards like DD Guide. If you could just assemble these two cards together with Cauldron of the Old Man, you could slowly burn the opponent through the course of a few turns, while they couldn't do anything. This deck was vulnerable to side deck hate like Cosmic Cyclone or Lightning Storm, but this is where Skuld's Oracle came in. If you could just look at the top card of your opponent's deck each turn, you can make sure they'll never get a piece of spell trap removal to the hand unless they have a whole playset sitting on top of the deck. This incredibly infuriating strategy was just one of the reasons why people clamored for Mystic Mind to be banned so much, and was even strong enough to take the first place at a YCS in 2022. And at number 2, we have Absolute King Backjack. This is a level 1 Dark Fiend monster, which when sent to the grave, let's look at the top 3 cards from your deck and then place them back in any order you want. Then during your opponent's turn, it can, at quick effect speed, banish itself from the graveyard to activate the top card of your deck. And if it's a normal trap card, you can set it to your field and it can be activated that turn. Backjack has always been a crazy good enabler for trap-heavy decks. At release, it seemed to be almost tailor-built for Burning Abyss decks, with half the deck being cards with amazing effects that milled, and the other half being powerful normal traps. At last, Fiend Grieving, which came out not long after Backjack, can foolish either that or a BA name while also being Graveyard Disruption on top of it. Once BA decks fell off, this card would not too long after find a new home in 60-card Paleozoic decks, which had an insane amount of normal traps and even better ways to mill them than Dante in That Grass Looks Greener. And even nowadays, while this card might not be part of a tier 1 strategy anymore, it's still a staple in Labyrinth decks, which have the unique trait of being able to combo Backjack with their archetypal hand traps to set traps during your opponent's first turn. There's just a lot going for Backjack, which can put down traps in the field in a way that's really hard to play around with back row removal, as you can just hold on to it until it's the right time to activate it. And even if you don't find any traps within the top 3 cards, you can still stack something else that disrupts your opponent's plays. All of this will also be able to fix your top deck for 3 turns that made this card a staple for many trap decks in the past and now. And finally, at number 1, we have Lavalval Chain. This is a generic rank 4 monster which can, on a soft once per turn, detach 1 material to either send a card from the deck to the graveyard, or choose a monster from your deck and place it on top of your deck. Lavalval Chain is one of those banned cards that can never come back to the game. Being able to dump any card off of a generic rank 4, which isn't even a hard once per turn, was far too much for modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Even all the way back when this card was banned in 2015. Infinity decks abuse this card to its fullest extent, dumping cards like Archfiend Eris and Stygian Street Patrol for combo extension. This deck was so proficient at spamming the board with level 4s with Chain, it'd often go through multiple Lavalvals in a single turn, and it clogged the board so much the regular combo involved going into Diamond Direwolf just to destroy a couple of your own monsters and clear up zones so you can keep going off. But even if other decks didn't use Chain in such a flashy way, it still provided way too much utility for far too many decks. Even Necrons at the height of their power relied on this card to make one of their most powerful plays, as it could dump Jhin, release her rituals from the deck to the graveyard so that you could use it for ritual summon later on and lock your opponent out of special summoning monsters completely. Even Volcanics, a completely different off-mana strategy, greatly appreciated this card, as it let you dump your Blaze Accelerate Reload to the grave so that your opponent would have to deal with a quick effect Raigeki during their turn with Scattershot. There's just no telling what kind of impact this card would have in 2022 when it was already broken 7 years ago, when graveyard effects weren't nearly as good as they are now. This card is by far the strongest card with the ability to stack the top card of your deck, even if that wasn't the main reason why it was so good. There were a couple of cool interactions with this effect, such as Infernities being able to stack Infernity Archfiend and then draw into it with Upstart Goblin, but you can't compete with the impact of a Foolish Burial on legs. The only way this card could come back was if all it had was its deck stacking effect. Still, even if it was never the main reason why this card saw so much play, it still makes Lavalval Chain into the best card on this list by far. Alright, and that's it. If you happen to know of any other cards you might have missed or have any ideas for future videos just like this one, please let us know down in the comments below.